Okay, before I get into today's breaking news concerning the Joe Budden podcast, I first like to state this for the record. I am going to be on top of you guys' necks on this particular video. For all those out there, the non-believers that I've been telling you guys for weeks and months, what's the main issue that's going on between Rory and Mal and Joe Budden. You guys kept saying in the comment section, hit me up in the DMs, catch me in these social media streets talking about, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It has nothing to do about that. It has nothing to do about this. It has nothing to do about the Spotify. Mal ain't really chasing no bags. It's not about the money. It has nothing to do with the money. Mal just wanted an understanding. Okay, he just want to know where the boundaries are. It was based on friendship. Okay, he didn't treat them like their friends. Okay, for all you guys that was spewing that nonsense, I'm on you today because I got time today. All right, so in the latest episode of the Joe Budden podcast, Joe Budden confirmed that Rory has been fired. Now, I've been reading some other articles that's also painting a picture of Mal has been fired too. But from what I gathered from that episode, he's on Rory right now. And basically in this podcast, if you have not listened to it, he has confirmed that he fired Rory because Rory wanted the accounting team to be audited, okay? And he basically tried to sugarcoat it, saying he trusts Joe Budden. He just don't trust the accountants in their accounting offices. So he wants an audit, all right? And when that news got to Joe Budden, he was livid, and he basically said, you know what? You don't have any say-so to check the books, and he was 88 out the gate. He's essentially fired from the Joe Budden podcast, okay? Also, in this particular episode, Mal wanted, and I kept telling you guys, Mal too was also chasing the bag, okay? He would contradict himself. He'll pretty much say it's not about the money on the podcast, but when you catch him on social media, that's all he talks about is the money, all right? So Mal wanted him to chase the YouTube money. He wanted a percentage of the YouTube money. And let me tell you something. For all those out there that think you can, make a lot of money, tons of money on YouTube, you're sadly mistaken. The deal that they have, Rory and Mal are overpaid. Okay? They are overpaid. Okay, but they want more money. Also in this episode, Joe Budden talks about, which I clearly state this on my other videos, talking about, I don't think Rory and Mal are built for podcasting. I think they understand that they have a good thing with Joe Budden. They don't mind doing the Joe Budden podcast, but they just do it and then they just go on with their lives. Okay, and I also told you guys that there's no incentive from either Rory and Mal to do other things, okay, to have their own podcast, okay? They could have done that, okay? Joe Budden announced that he was trying to encourage Mal to have a sports podcast or a relationship podcast or do fashion, but Mal was not interested in, and he even said this in the Shaking the Tree episode, he's just not built that way. He just really don't care about podcasts. He loves making the money from the podcast. He really just don't care about the podcast. He also talked about and explained how there was other companies that wanted to do business with Joe Budden, and Joe Budden gave those offers to Rory only for Rory to turn them down, okay? Because Rory and Mal are under this same umbrella. They don't want to do the legwork. They don't want to do the man hour, okay? They don't want to be responsible for labor, okay? For production and writing and being creative thinkers. They just want to come in the booth, hang with Joe, make an excellent check, and breeze on out. That's pretty much Rory and Mal in a nutshell. Also in this podcast, there was a lot of juicy stuff in this particular podcast. These fools signed a contract and they don't know nothing about their contract. Okay? Now, if you're a Rory and Mal fans and you're saying to yourself, well, they're going to get themselves together and they're going to create their own podcast. As of right now, they're under contract with Joe Budden and they can't create another podcast for at least another year. Okay? Can Rory and Mal survive a whole year without doing any type of content or podcast wise and start creating a podcast, start doing a podcast after a year later? By that time, the fans are going to dwindle. There's nobody going to be interested in a Rory and Mal podcast a year down the road. Okay. He also, in this episode, he talked about the entitlement he sensed between the two, between Rory and Mal. Now, before I go any further, I first like to state this. I should have said this in the beginning. Rory, Mal, and Joe Budden handled this the wrong way. There was a wrong and a right thing. There's a wrong and a right way, and obviously these three individuals handled it the wrong way. Okay? So, also in this episode, he was really on Rory. Okay? Rory was upset that Joe Budden was friends with DJ Akademiks. Now, Rory and DJ Akademiks have this beef, like a Tupac Biggie beef. It's on for life. Death Row versus Bad Boys and Bad Boy Records. And these guys are just, it's mostly DJ Akademiks instigating it from the start. And DJ Akademiks is giving him jabs and hook shots and uppercuts. And Roy just stands there, okay? So Rory was upset, and he was very sensitive of the fact that Joe Budden is still friends with DJ Akademiks, okay? Which, that was another thing I talked about. The jealousy that Rory had. Obviously, this was to me, on Rory's side of things, this was a emotional move, okay? He was acting out on pure emotion, okay? There was nothing logical about all the decisions and all the choices he wanted to do as far as doing an audit, checking the books, when you haven't even read your own contract, okay? So how are you going to check the books? You haven't even read your own contract, okay? I don't know. And like I told you guys on other videos, I don't know who's, I don't know if it's their agent, their management team, who, I don't even think they have agents at this point. I think they just manage themselves, all right? But they're getting bad advice and they keep constantly doing dumb things, all right? Now, like I said, I have read other articles that Mal is fired as well. But when I listen to the podcast, Joe Budden is, saying basically Mal did not want it to come in that episode because he knew that Joe Budden was going to talk about this and really pound Rory and make Rory into what he was already becoming, trying to play himself as a victim. And he was very jealous of DJ Akademiks. He's jealous of the fact that Joe Budden gets more credit, which he should. The name of the podcast is Joe Budden. It's the Joe Budden Network. And the only reason why he's getting these deals like Revolt, Spotify, Complex, is because of his name, his brand. He's an icon, Joe Budden. But Rory and Mal got it twisted and confused, thinking that they're part of his brand. Like, they helped him become the person that he is. And like I always tell people, when you're doing business, you should never do business with friends and family. And this is the reason why you don't do business with friends or family. Because your friends and family are going to perceive business and look at business emotionally. Okay? They're not going to look at it logically. Okay. And I knew that from the word go. Okay. All you guys that sit up there in the comment section talking about, oh, I didn't know what I was talking about. They're not mad about the Spotify deal. It's really not about the money. This was all to do for the money. Okay. And these guys were overpaid. Okay, these guys were overpaid. All right, now I don't have an official. I don't know what they were making. Okay, but they were making great money to absolutely do nothing but to shoot the breeze with Joe Budden. That's pretty much what they did. They just come into the building and they just rap with Joe Budden for like 2 hours, and they're 88 out the gate. They go on with their lives. They had the most easiest job in the country. The easiest job. And how can you screw up the most easiest job in the country? That's like getting fired on your day off. How can you screw up a position, an opportunity like that? And on top of that, Joe Budden is also giving you guys other opportunities, but you guys are too lazy, or it's just not in you. Okay, podcast is just not your thing. I mean, just being a creative thinker, to be a creative content provider is just not your thing. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing. You know, a lot of people out there are not good content creators. All right. You don't have to be good or great at something that you probably don't like. Okay. On the real, to be on the real on this, I feel like Rory and Mal just looked at it, the Joe Budden show, as, look, we just coming in there shooting the breeze with him. The only difference is we're not doing it with the three of us. We're doing it, the three of us, with thousands upon thousands of viewers. And we're getting paid for this bid. We're getting paid for this joint. So I kept telling you guys, nobody wanted to listen to me. Everyone kept saying, oh, I'm wrong. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, it's not about the money. It's always about the money. All you have to do is follow the money, okay? When you follow the money, you will logically see the problem. And that was the whole enchilada about this thing, okay? Like I said, they're still under contract, and Joe is so petty, he's not going to allow these boys to come out with their own podcast to try to make up the money that they're they're still going to get paid, okay? But as far as them keeping their names in these social media streets, that's another thing, okay? Because what they kind of do good that they don't like necessarily doing or preparing to doing is podcasting, and they're not, podcasting for a year. I feel like Rory is definitely fired. He's 88 out the gate. There's no coming back from that. Mal, on the other hand, I feel like he can come back, but he's going to have to do a complete turnaround on his principles, okay? And he's going to have to explain, Lucy, you're going to have to explain type of moment. And it's going to come off as, you're just saying this just to keep your job. Nobody's not going to put any validation to what he says, okay? There's no way unless he's going to come up there and just tell them the truth, he can probably come back from that. And Rory Mal had an issue with Ice and Ish taking over the seats. I felt like these guys thought that, if we go on strike, that means there's no Joe Budden show. And then that also means Joe Budden is going to have to sit in the lab, and now we put pressure on him, and now we get what we actually want from Joe Budden. But Joe Budden is a very smart individual, and there was other people that he kicks it with that can do that job and do it pretty decent or pretty well. Okay, and that's what Ice and Ish did, and that's why they're doing a Patreon. That's why they're doing a podcast with Joe Budden, but it's Patreon exclusive. And Joe Budden capitalized off of a bad thing, okay, of Rory and Mal striking, Joe Budden capitalized and made money, made profit, made a revenue, made a new podcast. Meanwhile, Rory and Mal, they didn't do anything while they was on hiatus. They didn't do a damn thing. Okay. And like I said, look, I wish the best for, Rory and Mal as well as Joe Budden. I think Joe Budden's going to be all right. All right. I don't know about Rory. Maybe Rory goes back into the music industry, but the music industry isn't the same like it was 10, 20 years ago. Okay. Maybe there might be some interest in him as far as doing a podcast or, I don't know necessarily what Rory's interests are other than he was in the music business. Okay. In the music industry. Mal, I feel like best case scenario, he comes crawling back to Joe Budden, but he's going to have to sing a whole new complete tune on why he came back to the Joe Budden podcast. And I feel like even if he comes back, it's just not going to be hitting the same way. It just doesn't feel, it's not going to feel the same way, okay? Because both of these individuals are going to be heavily guarded. And I'm not talking about, security guards. I'm just talking about what made their podcast good was they was free thinkers. They just said whatever came out of their mouth, okay? I feel like Mal is going to be guarded on the things that he say, on the words that he's going to placate to. And, Joe Budden's still going to be Joe Budden, okay? And I just don't think it's going to be hitting the same way. Me personally, I feel like this is the end of the Joe Budden podcast of these three individuals. I feel like Ice and Ish may take over their seats, and then they will do the Joe Budden podcast, and then maybe Joe Budden will do, an after dark with Ice and Ish, or with the other members of the Joe Budden podcast, or make Ice and Ish stay on the Patreon podcast exclusively for Patreon, and Parks or whoever takes over the role for the original Joe Budden podcast, or maybe Mal and Parks or whoever. We're just gonna have to wait and see. Hey man, I kept trying to tell you guys would not believe me. And, it took this long for you guys to get to this point. And I was already on this point months ago. All right. It's your boy. I'm up out of here, deuces.